Alright, so far I've addressed the difference between traditional tolerance and pluralistic tolerance. Now I'm going to move on to three of the major logical fallacies of pluralistic tolerance. First of all, pluralistic tolerance on a logical level, it's impossible to implement. And this is because in order for me to tolerate anything from you or for you to tolerate anything from somebody else, you actually have to have differences of opinion. I actually have to have a view. You have to have a different view. They might be able to be complementary type views, but we have to have differences. If there are no differences, there's no room to actually tolerate anything. So it's simply impossible to implement. It's a standard where in order to coincide or agree with pluralistic tolerance, to practice pluralistic tolerance, we have to totally turn our brains off. We can't think. Because as soon as I think, and as soon as you think, and as soon as we have differences of opinion, even if they complement one another, the pluralistic tolerance standard is broken. So anyway, logically speaking, it's impossible to implement. The second reason or logical fallacy that pluralistic tolerance has is it is self-defeating. And this is because it violates what is called the law of non-contradiction. Lou Weeder and Ben Gutierrez, in a book called Finding Your Worldview, they say the law of non-contradiction states that something cannot both exist and not exist, or be true and false at the same time and in the same way and within the same context. So I just want to stress that it's the same thing at the same time within the same context. For example, I've had people trying to support pluralistic tolerance, and they weren't saying pluralistic tolerance, but they were exalting the ultimate idea of it, even though they weren't aware that pluralistic tolerance was the, I guess, proper term for what they were supporting. But they say that all truth is relative, and one of the examples that they give is, well, see, it's not raining here, but it is raining somewhere, so therefore it is raining and it is not raining. Well, that's a good idea in a sense, but in any given geographic location, like where I'm standing, if I was outside, it'd be clear that it's not raining. Or it'd be clear that it's raining, but it would not be both raining and not raining at the same time. At any geographic location, in this kind of instance, the location is the context. It can't be both raining and not raining at the same time. If it is raining, we can definitely tell how hard it is raining. It's not going to be raining harder and less hard at the same time. If it isn't raining, we can still determine how dry it is, how much precipitation is in the air. But we can boil this down to absolutes at any given time within any given geographic context. But context is the king in this matter. Now, pluralistic tolerance, the reason it's self-defeating, just to throw out an example, it doesn't say any view is wrong. It says that all views are right. So Jesus Christ said He's the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through Him. Basically, Jesus means that He is the only way to salvation. This is an exclusive statement. Another exclusive statement is a Muslim belief. Allah is God and there's no God but Allah. Muslims believe it is blasphemous to say that God has a son. Allah and Yahweh, who is Father God from the Bible, they're not one and the same. And Yahweh has a son named Yeshua, Jesus Christ. Those are just the Hebrew terms for Father God and Jesus. The key here is the Muslim belief about God and the Christian belief, the triune singular God. He's a tri-unity, but He's also just a single unity. Anyway, they don't mesh. Then again, the atheist belief that there is no God. It's an exclusive claim that does not allow for the validity of Muslim belief or Christian belief. Okay, so the thing is, pluralistic tolerance says Jesus Christ is right in making His exclusive statement. That Muslims are right in making their exclusive statements. That atheists are right in making their exclusive statements. But it also says that they are wrong. It tries to say they are both true and false at the same time. False because they do not agree with one another, and true because pluralistic tolerance tries to say that everything is true. It's therefore the absolute that is against all other absolutes. Pluralistic tolerance makes an absolute statement, but it does so under the guise of simply being against all absolutes. You can't say that Jesus Christ absolutely is the God. The Muslims are right. The Buddhists and Hindus are right. It's against all such exclusive absolutes. But it does so under the guise of being an absolute in itself. So it's an absolute that denies absolutes. It logically doesn't make any sense. It's self-defeating. Then The third logical fallacy that I'm going to bring up right now about pluralistic tolerance is largely based on the fact that it's impossible to implement. I already explained why it's impossible to implement. But because it is impossible to implement, what people who exalt pluralistic tolerance, what they do is they get into double standards of logic. So in some cases, they don't apply pluralistic tolerance. And when they don't apply it, they don't say, hey, I'm not practicing my belief right now of pluralistic tolerance. They simply just don't practice it. But then in cases where it suits them, where it's suitable for them, where it's convenient, then they're like, well, all beliefs are true and accurate. You can't say that anything else is wrong in this realm. But in other realms, and just to give you a quick example that involves the ethical realm. Okay, so say the Bible has a very strict view of what proper sexuality is about. It's supposed to be done within the marriage covenant only. Simply put, and so you have a mother, and she doesn't necessarily, she stands on the idea of pluralistic tolerance. Okay, so in a sense she mocks the idea of biblical sexuality, that it is only meant for the marital relationship. She mocks it in a sense, but she also says, well, that can be good for Christians. They can have their truth. Okay, well, this mother at the same time, but she says, I have my truth. My truth is, I'm more lenient than the biblical model, but I do believe a person should only have one sexual partner at a time, and that doing more than that is wrong. Okay, so she says, you have your truth, I have my truth, and we're both right. Then she has a daughter, and she trains up her daughter to believe similarly. And her daughter goes along with this belief system until she gets in college, wherein she gets involved in orgies and certain other sexual relationships that even her mother stands against. And her mother confronts her daughter and says, you can't do this. You are wrong in this. But upon what basis is she wrong? The mother, just going based off of her feel-good attitude of we can all have our little individual truths, she doesn't have any basis to say that her daughter's wrong. So her daughter, in standing her ground, says, well, in the way that you feel good about your belief system, so I feel good about my belief system. And so there's this double standard where this mother in this case, she's like, hey, you Christians, you have your truth and that's fine, and I have my truth, but I stand against my daughter's truth. And there's no, so it's a logical double standard within the realm of ethics. Possibly to make this a little bit more clear though, let's bring out another example that doesn't involve the same realm. And here's a classic example of where people typically will apply pluralistic tolerance in some cases and not in others. So if you in an academic setting say that 2 plus 2 equals 4, then you are correct, and everyone will agree with you. If you say 2 plus 2 equals 6, you are wrong. If you say it equals 8, you are wrong. Pluralistic tolerance, based on a strict definition, if it was applied to the academic world, it could not say that 2 plus 2 equals 6 is wrong. It has to say that 2 plus 2 equals 4, 6, 8, or whatever you want it to say, that they're all equally true and equally valid. Well, people who espouse pluralistic tolerance, they're typically not going to apply it in an academic setting because they're going to be accused of simply being wrong. They're not going to be able to defend themselves. So they're not going to have anybody in their corner backing their views up in that case. It's similarly to the way, so if you are in charge of paying people, like $20 an hour, you're going to get in trouble if you pay people either more or less. You need to be exact. The exact amount, $20 per hour for the set amount of hours worked, is what you need to pay people. If you pay people more than that, the business owners are going to be mad. If you pay people less than that, the people who are getting paid are going to be mad. You have to pay people exactly the right amount. So pluralistic tolerance doesn't work in this setting either. Or if you show up late to work all the time, okay, pluralistic tolerance isn't going to help you out. You're not going to be able to say to your boss, well, you know what, I have my belief system. If I show up 15 minutes to work late, you can't do anything about it because my way is just as valid as yours. In that case, you're just going to get fired. So people typically will apply a standard of truth that is very logical, concrete, unchangeable, can't argue against it, but then they have their various, when it's convenient for them, they apply the pluralistic standard, and this typically happens in like realms of ethics or realms of religion. Again, going back to Jesus Christ said one thing, Muslims say one thing, Buddhists say one thing, and people just want to go, okay, well, you're all right. But really, that is just as silly as saying that 2 plus 2 equals 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. It can't be all of them. Exclusive claims, they eliminate one another. So, the double standard of logic that people who stand upon pluralistic tolerance, that is a logical fallacy of pluralistic tolerance.